I'm a great believer in you learn by doing, and I'm famously kind of tough on myself in terms of, my day job. I think I can cram like 100 hours into a day, and I think I can do way more than is humanly possible. I think in the beginning, I just put so much pressure on myself. I signed up to every newsletter, I had every course open, and I was just like, I need to learn all the things. And, it's a slow realization sometimes, I think, that, I've worked in sustainability for 20 years and I still learn new things every day. So why did I think I could suddenly kind of nail self-publishing in under 2 years? It was a ridiculous expectation I put on myself. But I've also relaxed as well into actually, this is all fine. This can be fun. I can play. I don't have to be like crazy alpha female and know all the stuff and be an expert. I can break a load of eggs. I can go, oh, that didn't work. And that feels like a far more positive, far more playful, far more joyful place to come out from.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 326 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In today's episode, I have an interview with E.L. Williams. Now, E.L. Williams grew up in the Welsh Valleys in a tiny house full of books and stories of magic. Having worked as a sustainability advisor for the last 20 years, Emma's writing is influenced by her desire to protect and cherish the natural world. When she's not working or writing, she's usually found reading, gardening, or plotting how to sneak yet another houseplant into the home she shares with her ever-tolerant husband. Emma is the author of the novels The First Ethereal and The Blessing of Crows. And we talk about her books, her writing life, and a very unique merchandising product she recently released in collaboration with a brewery, and that's coming up later in this episode. But first, let's hear comments from recent episodes. Over at Stark Reflections for episode 324, The Asset of Attention with Joe Solari, Talina Winter said, "Great episode. I wanted to pop in here to say that I listened to Advantage on Audio on Audible." And I believe Talina was mentioning because I was going to Joe's website, his direct site, to purchase it, and it was not available in audio. So Talina says, so maybe Joe just needs to put it in his direct store. It was a great read. Looking forward to reading this new book. And Talina, thank you so much for pointing that out, because I went right to Joe's store. I didn't go look at the regular retailers, even though I do have an Audible subscription and a Kobo Writing Life audio subscription, and I use the library, etc. So thank you for that reminder, Talina, because again, this is a valuable reflection. I went to the link Joe gave me, and what I really wanted wasn't available on the link Joe gave me, so I gave up and then complained publicly to Joe. As opposed to doing what the consumer should probably do, is going to see if it's available through my favorite retailers. But I didn't. I stopped at that link, and that's the value in providing links and choices right where you direct your consumers. So if you're directing them to your website, and you only have a link to one place rather than the various places that are there, like a universal book link, you could be losing the reader because we're so easily distracted and we're off to the next thing. So thank you for that reminder, Talina, and I'll have to go check out Joe's books over on those places, those retailers where I have subscriptions. Not to ignore YouTube, I'm noticing that more and more listeners are listening to the audio-only feed of this podcast over at YouTube. So thank you so much for the comments on YouTube. Nikki over there, for example, who says, I hope you feel better real soon, in response to last week's episode, and I'll get into that in my personal update. And SD Houston, who said she'd love, this was part of a conversation we had over in the comments on YouTube, that she'd love for me to have Dale Roberts come back in this podcast because he hasn't been on for a while. So thank you. Definitely going to have Dale come back on. Thanks for that comment. Over on the Twitter sphere, or the X marks the spot sphere, whatever the hell it's being called today, a comment from regular commenter Edwin Downward, and this is one of his more recent comments, is Edwin said, Mark Leslie gave us a fascinating look back on his latest Stark Reflections podcast, contrasting what he said in episode number 6, 5 years ago, to what we see in the indie writing community today. What struck me the most is how the nuances have changed, but the underlying reasons are so similar. Thank you for that reflection, Edwin. Always fun. Also over on Twitter, at Sci-Fi Whiteley, it was Connor Whiteley, said, Mark Leslie, thank you for your kind message of support today on the podcast about the stupidity of Florida. It means a lot that you're willing to say what you said publicly and not go to a conference you would have benefited from. You're a great person, and sorry you had to miss it. Thank you so much, Connor, for that. And a huge thank you and a giant virtual hug to the many people who privately also messaged me very similar messages that Connor said, and their appreciation of me taking a stand in my decision to not attend NINC, Novelist Inc., in St. Pete, Florida this past September. And I did that as a show of solidarity with members of the LGBTQAI plus communities. And I know it's not going to make much of a difference, but it does make a difference to the people who are listening. It makes a difference that I was willing to do that, and that I was willing to publicly state my perspective, my fears, and of course my support. And it means so much to me that so many people reached out and shared their private messages. So I appreciate that. Thank you guys so much. Like I said, it's probably not going to make a huge difference to what's going on in the BS that's happening in the state, but it's always important. It is always important that people know that you stand with them, and they know that you're willing to take a stand with them. So it's just a reminder for all of us that you think people know how you feel about something, but it never hurts to express that the way that you feel. And that goes for standing with people that you value and respect and admire, and making sure that it's stated, because they may not actually realize you feel that way. But think about the people in your life that you care about, and just taking the time to let them know that you care about them. They should assume you care about them. But when was the last time that you just paused to say that thing, to bring it out in feelings you care, you respect, you admire, you stand with? Let those people in your life know how you feel about them. Because you never know when you're not going to get that chance. Speaking of which, I love when you guys let me know what you're thinking about when you're listening to the podcast. So thank you so much for everyone who leaves comments on the various ways you can leave comments. I love to hear what you're thinking, what you are reflecting as you're listening to the podcast. And you can do that over at starkreflections.ca, or, of course, the various social medias. You can also email me directly, mark@markleslie.ca. Let me know if it's okay for me to share the comment, unless I know that it's okay, or I've reached out and said, hey, is it okay if I share this? I do like that. So again, huge thank you to all that sharing. Now, I'm going to do a read for the sponsor of this episode. This episode is sponsored by the patrons who support this podcast over at patreon.com/starkreflections, where for $1, $3, or $5 a month, you get access to additional bonus content. And I'm going to be talking about that coming up just in this little ad read here. But I'd love to welcome new patron T. Thorne Coyle to the podcast, to the wonderful family of awesome peeps who support the podcast over at, did I mention this already? Patreon.com/darkreflections. Thank you so much, Thorne, for joining, and to all the wonderful folks who support this podcast. I want to make sure Thorne and everyone who is a patron, make sure you have access to the additional audio content as well as the other content. And speaking of bonus content, I'm going to be providing a couple of pieces for you, dear listener. The first thing is that just this week, I had the great fortune to interview Eric LaSalle about his latest novel, Laws of Annihilation. Now, most people would recognize Eric as Dr. Peter Benton from ER, or perhaps as the oily-haired Daryl Jenks in Eddie Murphy's Coming to America, but Eric has long defined himself as a storyteller. He's had a passion for writing since he was a young teenager, and his thrillers in his latest novel, Laws of Annihilation, coming out later this month, his thrillers are quite remarkable. And we talk about his writing in that interview, and of course, patrons will have access to that a few weeks early, because I thought, why not give you awesome peeps access? That episode where I interview him will be coming out on Friday, October 20th, because his latest novel, the third book in his Laws series, is coming out on the 24th of October. So patrons will get access to that additional content early. And in addition, content that's not going to be available outside of patrons, but is available. It's going to be a talk that I recorded for the Fiction Marketing Academy on maximizing your IP as an author. Now, the Fiction Marketing Academy 3.0 is taking place October 9th to 15th, 2023. It is free to attend, but you do have to register. And there'll be a link to where you can register to it over in the show notes at starkreflections.ca. But for my patrons, I thought, why not provide you the access so you can watch that presentation without having to register if you don't want to. But you can register, and there's a lot more fantastic talks. And again, the link for Fiction Marketing Academy will be in the show notes at starkreflections.ca, and my talk is on maximizing your revenue by exploiting your IP. And again, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who supports the podcast over at patreon.com/starkreflections. It means so much to me. Okay, brief personal update. If you can't tell from my voice, I'm still a little bit under the weather. Now, last episode, I did talk about feeling like a bag of poop. And guess what? Guess what, my friends? I ended up having COVID. It was actually late on Thursday last week that I tested positive. I'd been testing all week, and it was negative. Lo and behold, I ended up having COVID, which meant a few things. There's a talk I was doing on Friday for Sheridan College, writing and publishing program. Had to do that virtually, of course, for the safety of everyone. And I had paid to do an event in Cambridge, Ontario on the Saturday that I had to cancel. I even rented a car for these things because my car's dead. It's broken, and we're kind of between that extra car right now. So I'd rented a car, but that kind of everything went out the window when I got COVID. So I ended up isolating, of course, and actually I've been negative for several days now. I only tested positive, I think 2, maybe 3 days, and then I was positive or negative, meaning I did not have COVID, but I stayed isolated again, where I've remained. But I still have this thing in my throat that you can hear. And probably because I've had bronchitis numerous times and I've had pneumonia in both lungs. And anytime I get any sort of cold, it sticks in my chest and I can't get rid of it. And so even doing the recording that I mentioned in the ad read for the Fiction Marketing Academy, it was a 45-minute talk, maybe 50-minute talk, and I was hacking up a lung. And numerous times, it took me almost 2 hours to record it because I was bending over and coughing and stuff like that. So I had a lot of editing to do for that video. Even this episode, you can probably hear my voice is getting a lot raspier. Even in just this talking, my voice, I'm losing the voice. I'm having to stop. I'm having a cough clear my throat. There's just something there I can't get rid of, and it's driving me absolute bonkers. But all that being said, I'm feeling a lot better. I am no longer COVID positive, so that's good news. And I'm looking forward to enjoying the rest of the fall. I'm looking forward to getting rid of this gosh darn cough. But that's it for my personal update. I'll get into some of the writing stuff in the next episode. But without further ado, why don't we play the bumper and get into this wonderful conversation that I had with E.L. Williams. Emma, welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Hello. Hi, Mark. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
It's great to get a chance to chat with you, and I think we'll get into a little bit later about how we connected and the awesome thing that you did. But before we get there, for listeners of the podcast, can you please sort of explain your entryway into this publishing journey?
Yeah. So I started writing about 1 million years ago. It took me about 10 years to write my first book because
1 million years? You look so young.
Yeah, it's all the blueberries.
But sorry, it took 10 years to write the first book?
Yeah, probably about 10 years because
Okay.
I had a really hectic corporate job at the time. So I wrote on weekends and holiday, and I had no idea what I was doing. And then around 2018, 2019, I thought, do you know what? Life is way too short to not follow your passion and not give it a go at least. And I think, like most people, I thought at the time the way to publication was an agent and a publisher and that whole thing.
Right.
And I got kind of bullied into going, in a lovely way, into going to a writers' conference by my writing teacher. So we there was a small group of us to go on a Friday morning to a writing group. And our teacher was really adamant that if we wrote, we were writers and we needed to be confident about that.
Right.
And she was like, there's a conference, come. And we were all like, no, we can't possibly. We ended up going, and it was such a revelation because I'd booked a load of Ethereal was kind of drafted and ready at that point. And I booked a load of agent review meetings for the afternoon and day 2. And I thought, I'm just going to do it. I'll be a brave girl and take it on the chin and see what they say. And then I had a workshop booked on day 1, which was called Publishing 101, run by a guy called Scott Pack, who is really well known in the industry. He's an agent, a publisher, he used to be a book buyer for Waterstones. So he really knows the stuff. And by the time I came out of that workshop, I knew that I wanted to be indie. So I looked at, the pros and cons. I know traditional publishing is a really hard business. I know most books don't make money. Mm-hmm. But when I looked at it all on paper, I thought, nah, traditional, even if I was lucky enough to get a traditional deal, that doesn't feel like it fits with me and who I am and what my values are. So hence the indie road began in 2019, and book 1 was published Halloween 2020.
Oh, wow. Okay. So then you decided to do this in 2019. And then in the midst of this process, the whole world changed.
Yeah.
And you still kept your conviction. You didn't waver, you didn't shake. You're just like, no, let's keep going.
Do you know, I think it helped me because my day job, I've been self-employed for 10 years. Okay. And the pandemic just wiped out a lot of my work because all of my clients just hit the pause button. So, I had no excuse for
right. Okay.
10 years before. I had, the day job pulling me and clients kind of, demanding my time. And suddenly, global pandemic. And part of me thought, that thing, be careful what you wish for. I have been going, if only I had the opportunity to take a few months out, I could finish this book, global pandemic. So I'm sorry.
Convenient global pandemic came along. So,
yeah. It did ruin my big moment though, because the thing that kept me going when I was trying to, navigate all the editing and the publishing stuff and those millions of things that you need to learn about, I kept thinking, I'm going to have a party, I'm going to go to the local pub, I'm going to have a cake shaped like my book and all my friends will be there and it will be amazing. And this was my motivating moment and my launch party was on Zoom. There was no cake. I don't think there was even any beer. I wore a witch's hat just because I wanted to liven it up a bit.
Right.
But yeah, I don't recommend having a book party on Zoom during the pandemic. It was a real downer.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to get to, right?
Indeed.
Traffic was great.
Turnout was good.
Yeah, there were no issues with, being enough room for everyone, that kind of stuff. So, but wait a second. So you published this, you said at the end of 2020.
Yep.
Is this the book that you changed the title on?
No, that was book 2. So the first ethereal was remains the same title. So I published that October 2020.
Okay.
The plan in my head was that October 2021 I'd publish book 2. And I wrote that really quickly. I mean, compared to 10 years, anything would be quick, right?
Yeah, of course.
But by September 21, that was finished, and I'm ready to be edited. My beta readers had been over it. But then I had just a catalogue of things that didn't quite stack up. So the editor I had lined up, I couldn't use the editor for book 1. She was already booked. I found another editor for book 2. They disappeared. I still don't know where they went. Then I had delays with my cover. And then I got into my really, really busy season with client work.
Mm-hmm.
And we had, you're a dog lover. We had a very elderly mini Schnauzer at the time, and he developed terrible autoimmune disease. So basically needed 24/7 care. The house was covered in like medicine charts and timers everywhere to kind of keep on top of his condition.
Right.
And then, what with everything, it took until March until book 2 was edited. I found a new editor who was brilliant. I threw it into the world and went back to work. And what I didn't really kind of twig at the time was my own health was deteriorating. So about 4 or 5 weeks after I launched the book, I had to have major surgery. So I had to have a big chunk of time out of work where I did no writing, no book marketing, no nothing until my health returned.
Mm-hmm.
So I think really, I just didn't give book 2 the time and attention. The Cold of Summer, which is what it was called before, was a working title. Okay. And even when I launched it, I kind of thought it's not quite right. But you think you can just be pragmatic and live with it. And then when the opportunity arose, I was like, no, I can't live with it. I have to pick a better title.
What was was there a definitive moment where you realized, yes, I am changing the title, even if you didn't know what it was going to be?
I had, annoyingly, probably only a couple of months after I published book 2, I wrote a short story called The Blessing of Crows. And I was like, that would have been a perfect title for book 2. You live and learn, right? But it was a slow realization, I think, that the brand, not just the covers, but the branding wasn't quite right. It didn't really fit, that the covers didn't then, the story didn't fulfill the promise of the covers, which I think originally were quite cozy and quite sweet. Mm-hmm. And then people would read the book and they'd go, oh my God, I love this story. But it's quite dark, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so it was a slow kind of realization that actually it's not quite right, but I don't know how to fix it. And I think it was June 22, I went to the self-publishing conference in London. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting there was a whole session on cover design and art. And even sitting in the audience before the guy even started speaking, I was like, my cover's wrong and I need to fix this. But the difficulty I had was really finding the genre, because the minute, you get to I talked to quite a few cover designers. I even find people on Instagram who I then find out were like, massive like giants in book design, who were really generous to me and really sweet to me without saying you can't afford it. But just having that fear that I was going to waste a lot of money because I didn't really have a clear idea of genre, because I didn't write to market. I wrote the book of my heart.
Right.
And I think when you do that, you don't, well, I didn't, other people might do this, but I didn't really have that clear definition of I'm writing this type of book with the following tropes and, the following subgenres.
Yeah.
So it took a while of me just kicking the can down the road, really, knowing it wasn't right, but not knowing how to fix it.
Wow. It seems like, we talked about that 10 years of, and then finally you got the thing done. And then in that intervening year between the publication of book one and the publication of book two, it felt like you put a lot of effort, not just getting another book ready, but getting the book ready, coming to a realization of what needed to be up. It always like the learning in that 1 year period was almost like this condensed version of, okay, now I'm gonna not make up for lost time, but it almost feels like there was a significant amount going on there. It almost feels like once you did something, once you actually released the first book, that opened you up to a whole new level of understanding and what needed to be changed. It almost felt, is it true that maybe you had to break a few eggs before you could make an omelet?
Definitely. I'm a great believer in you learn by doing. And, I'm famously kind of tough on myself in terms of, my day job. I think I can cram like 100 hours into a day. And I think I can do way more than is humanly possible. I think at the beginning, I just put so much pressure on myself. I signed up to every newsletter. I had every course open. I was just like, I need to learn all the things.
Yeah.
And it's a slow realization sometimes. I think that I've worked in sustainability for 20 years and I still learn new things every day. So why did I think I could suddenly kind of nail self-publishing in under 2 years? It was a ridiculous expectation I put on myself. So yeah, you're right, a lot of hard work and learning went on during that first year. But I think the big change has probably been this year when I finally figured out how to nail the cover issue.
Right.
Relaunching the books has really reinvigorated me. And this sounds like a contradiction, I don't mean it to be, but I've also relaxed as well.
Yeah.
into actually, this is all fine. This can be fun. I can play. I don't have to be like crazy alpha female and know all the stuff and be an expert. I can break a load of eggs. I can go, oh, that didn't work. And that feels like a far more positive, far more playful, far more joyful place to come out from.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that, actually, and I think that's an important message for other writers. But I guess it took a while to get to that point where you felt comfortable feeling relaxed.
I think it did. I think actually you and Shana Penn and the Relaxed Author, I think, felt like my massive permission slip to calm the hell down. And that was so needed, that book, that message of,
yeah,
you don't need to buy all the courses, you don't need to get it all right out of the trap, is that the right word? You can kind of learn as you go and iterate as you go and make it a little bit better and a little bit better as you progress. So and I think once I calmed down, that this kind of this gnarly problem of how do I take a risk on a new cover when I don't know what genre I'm in,
right,
that really kind of hit me in the head, because Scott Pack, the guy who did the Publishing 101 workshop, I had helped me in the past. He'd recommended proofreaders and things. So beginning of this year, I just emailed him and said, look, do you know somebody who would just read my book and tell me what genre? Because I don't want to wait. I explained the problem. I don't want to waste money on a new cover if I get the genre wrong. And failing that, I'm going to have to go into my local bookshop and see if I can pay a bookseller to kind of read it and tell me where they put it on the shelf. And he was great. He was like, yeah, I can do that. I do consulting. I'll help you out. So he read the book and he said, yeah, you've kind of got an urban fantasy stroke women's fiction book here. And basically you need to have a cover that's not going to look out of place in the hands of either reader.
Hmm.
And I was like, great, okay, I now have a route forward. And I think just having somebody who knows the industry give you that input made a massive difference. And then he connected me to Nell Wood, who designed the beautiful covers for the new books. And we get on like a house on fire. So yeah, it just really felt like everything came together and it was fun. And again, I just feel now I'm bringing a completely different energy to it all.
Oh, that's fantastic. But no, speaking of bringing a different energy, is you did something that I thought was pretty remarkable, pioneering, one might say, in terms of a marketing technique involving, well, two of my favorite things, books and beer. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So but I suppose the background is I was thinking about doing events this year and getting out and talking to people about the book.
Yeah.
And readers were asking me for merchandise, and I've spent 20 years in sustainability. I help companies on their sustainability impact and hold their feet to the fire and on their commitments and tell them when they need to up their game.
Yeah.
And there was no way I could go down the kind of plastic pen route or the squeezy stress toy or whatever is on the market. I was really thinking about an alternative. And at Christmas, we were having dinner with my family. So my son-in-law is a brewer, and he's one half of Deadweight Brewing, which is a kind of craft beer brewery here in the UK. And I think I'd probably had a beer because, yeah, that's probably where my ideas come from. And I said, hey, do you think you'd like brew me a beer and we could put my new book cover on it as a label? And he was like, yeah, don't see why not. And I kind of left it, didn't think about it. And then a few weeks later, he said, Dale and I have made is it a recipe? I think it is a recipe. I've designed a beer for you. So I was just completely blown away because I sort of thought if they did it, it would just be a relabeling of something that they already brewed. But
Right.
bless them, they really thought about ethereal and the title. And I think they thought about me being a complete lightweight. It's only 4.1% beer. And they brewed this beer especially for the book, which I have
Oh,
here.
yes.
I know that doesn't come across well on the audio, but
We'll
yeah.
have an image of that the show notes at starkreflections.ca of the beer that you shared in social media.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, it's just like a really novel thing to do, and all I have to do now, I have them all sitting down in the utility room. I just have to make sure I don't drink them all before the party. So
Yeah, so you leverage that for like sort of is it anniversary celebration launch? What did you call it? Like what sort of event did you have planned?
so I think I'm going to just call it like a book relaunch party, because I
Yeah.
feel very much like I'm relaunching book 1 and 2
Yeah.
with their new covers. Book 2 has got that new name, and so we're going to have a party. I'm going to have book cakes. That is
Book
definitely happening.
cakes.
Book cakes. Yeah.
Mm.
So I have a lady locally that can make a beautiful cake and take your artwork and print it on the icing. So it
So you're going
looks
to have
like,
a cake there for the people, the sweet tooth lovers, the beautiful merchandise. You're going to have beer for the beer lovers as well.
I'm just trying to think how I get an ethereal pizza, because I think that would just
Oh,
probably,
that'd be
that would be
perfect.
everything you
Oh my
need,
God,
right?
I'd never leave.
Okay. So yeah, it's just gonna be a little party, and then I'm probably gonna do some competitions for my mailing list, and I'm doing an event coming up, so I can't sell them there, I'm not licensed, but I can
Yeah.
take them and kind of show them.
Oh, that's cool. So I guess the question is, so this brewery is making this beer, but it's not just for you. They're selling this beer. So somebody who is lucky enough to be local that can go into this craft brewer can purchase this beer with your book cover on it.
Yeah, sure. So they do about probably about 6, because they're a small brewery. They change
Yeah.
frequently,
Yeah.
depending on the season, and so but they sell online. So it's Deadweight Brewing Company, and they ship all over the UK, so people can go and order
So anyone in the UK can go online and order this beer, and then obviously have either the print book in hand or an ebook version, and be sipping the beer and reading it and just experiencing the whole thing.
Definitely.
That's
Definitely.
fantastic. So I guess the other thing that's sort of related to this is, it's one thing just to do something cool. You're also doing it as, hey, I missed out on a launch party, and that you're launching the series now because now you got 2 books and there's sort of been some rebranding going on. And so you're doing the thing that you had dreamed of, probably for those 10 years, which is kind of cool. Then you've taken it up and you've got people like me jealous of the fact that you have a beer
Oh,
named after one of your books. But so the other thing that you did, one of the reasons that we're chatting today is you also did something where you kind of stuck your neck out, took a chance on social media. When you shared the beer, you didn't just share the beer. There was a question that you had of, has this been done before?
yeah. So look, that was such a long shot. So my husband is super, super positive. He's a business coach and he is always looking at the possibility. And so I get the beers and I was super excited. And he said, I've Googled it. This has never, ever been done before. And I went, don't be ridiculous. Somebody's bound to have done this. And he was like, nope, nope, nope. I've looked. So I went back and I edited the post because I thought, who might know? And I know you love from listening to the podcast for years. And I think Michael's a fan in Canadian Werewolf, isn't he? He's a beer fan. So your name popped into my mind and I thought, okay, I'm just going to be cheeky. And I felt a bit weird about it. And I thought, I'll just ask. So I tagged you and said, do you know if this has been done before? And now we're talking, which serendipity, eh?
And it's funny, I think I saw it, I got excited. I was like, no, I don't think it's been done before, specifically for a book. So what a cool thing. Let's talk about it. I'd love to learn more about the process. I'd love to, and that just struck me as a really important element of how we approach social media as authors. Like it's our hope that we put stuff out in the world and that it is enjoyed and appreciated and liked and shared and all those things. But oftentimes we're tweeting into the cricket world where it's just into the wind and it just blows away and no one ever sees it. But every once in a while, well, for example, I put stuff out in the world, and I'm a craft beer lover. I'm pretty blatant about it. I express that. I came to mind when you and your husband were having a discussion. Well, I know someone in the industry who might know this or not. So we'd never spoken before that I can recall. So I don't even know if I'd seen your Instagram profile before. I can't remember if I was following you before that or not. But I definitely, when I saw that, I went, oh, here's someone cool. And like, oh, this is neat. Followed the brewery, followed you, right? Because fun things that I want to check out more of. And then thought, wow, wouldn't this be a great conversation? I think there's an important lesson in those things that we put out into the world. That and I'm going to draw this back to you writing those books. You didn't write the books because you specifically said, here's a market I'm going to shoot for. You wrote the book that was true to you and your passion and a story that you wanted to tell. You did the beer because you thought it would be fun and neat. Everything else is just like it comes after that. It's almost like the gravy on the side that came along with the passion. Right? Hey, someone in the family is good at making good beer. You're good at making. Put our peanut butter and chocolate together here and see what we can do.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that, I think social media is a bit Marmite. Do you have Marmite in Canada?
Yes, we don't appreciate the flavor around these parts because I've tried it several times and I'm still it's a bit of an acquired taste.
Yeah, definitely. And I think social media is the same, isn't it? It's like you either love it or you hate it. And most people go through a period where they just hate it. And I've definitely been there and I've come back round now. And I think what you say is so on the money because it is about that connection. And, I've just dived into TikTok which I always said I wouldn't do, but then I've done it, and I'm quite enjoying it. I'm still not face to camera. I'm doing like little silly videos, and
Right.
but I've already met some really lovely people. And you're right, it is about that connection opportunity. And I think if we go back to the root of what social media was all about, i.e., connecting people, having conversations, being authentic and sharing, it's an amazing tool. I think, where it falls down is where it becomes that, buy my book, that tweeting into the void type of experience.
So you're having fun with TikTok then, which I think is critical, right? It's like, doing these 15-second, 30-second, whatever videos. It's not something that you feel of as a chore. You're thinking, oh, wouldn't it be neat if I did this? Or wouldn't this be cool to try? Is that the way you're approaching it?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't dive in because I know the advice is when you it's all about consistency. You have to post every day. A lot of advice, you have to post 4 times a day, and I already knew that wouldn't work for me.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, let's see if I can commit to just doing a video a day. And I think to date, my most views and likes is of a hedgehog rescue, but I talk about the books as well. But again, I think it's just about being authentic and saying, this is me, this is something that happened, and therefore I'm just going to keep showing up. And I suppose the people who like that will follow me, and the people who don't won't, and that's completely fine with me. But it is helping me to have a different view, I think, on book marketing, because for a long time I said I love writing and I hate book marketing, and then I thought, hang on, that's becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. So why don't I say I love marketing? Because I mean, my degree is in marketing, right? So I should quite like it, but why shouldn't I see it as a point of connection and meeting cool people, and then that's not really marketing, and I can have fun with that. And that feels like a completely different energy to, oh God, I've got to market my book and I'm so embarrassed and I don't want to. No, let's make it fun.
Oh, see, I love that. I love that. I just saw the head and the nail, the hammer coming together perfectly right there when you said that, because that kind of that really, I mean, talk about a great audio bite for a teaser for this episode. But there are a little bit of transparency there that I'm constantly making notes, going, "Oh, that would be a good clip for the beginning of show opening." But that kind of leads to something. So you had this journey, you had this dream, 10-year of getting a book out. It then happened, but then something happened to prevent the launch. But that's okay. You kind of rewrote the script, and you rewrote the marketing and the covers, stuff like that. So you launched, you tested, you adjusted, etc. But it feels like there's probably a few things you've learned, especially in the last 3 years, that potentially can benefit somebody else who hasn't yet taken that leap, that leap that you took in 2019, when you finally said, okay, let's get serious about this. What sort of advice would you want to share to writers who have that dream or have that passion, that have wanted to release that book?
I think the core bit of advice is just do it. I spent so many years thinking, oh, people like me can't be writers. I have no idea where those beliefs came from, but I really held myself back. And you said earlier about losing time, and I do have this. I've got a big birthday coming up next year, and I do have that sense of, oh, I'm really late to the party. I should have done this a long time ago. But I'm also a great believer in the timing is always perfect. And writing is one of those things. It's not like being a professional footballer. It doesn't matter if you start in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, beyond. So if you've got a book in you, just do it. And really, the other piece of learning is it's all learning, and it never stops. So I can imagine, I know you've written how many books? 30 plus books. Wow. So does the learning ever end? end. I don't think I even want it to end. I want to keep learning new things all the time. And I think once I got that clear in my mind that I didn't have to know all the stuff, I didn't have to do all the things, I could just relax into it and go, hey, I can have fun learning, and I get to write as well as I'm learning. So that would be my advice. Just do it. Don't worry what people are going to think about you, because they're going to have an opinion whether you do it or not. And then just enjoy the journey. And if you can make it fun and find the joy in it, then you really are winning.
That's fantastic words of advice. Thank you for that. For my listeners, Emma, please let us know where we can find out more about you, your website, social media, etc. online.
Great. So my website is elwilliamsauthor.com, and then on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, I'm at elwilliamsauthor.
Awesome. Emma, thanks for taking the time to hang out with me today.
Oh, thank you so much, Mark. I really enjoyed it.
So just a couple things I want to reflect on in the conversation with Emma. And the very first one is related to what you talked about, was a self-fulfilling prophecy of when you say, I like writing, but I hate marketing. And how Emma reapproached that, like reevaluated that attitude and understood. And this is a combination of her recognizing the value of being authentic and doing the things on social media that you were more comfortable with. Emma mentions, a lot of the social media stuff's not putting her face on the things, but they're very short clips of things she's comfortable sharing. So that authenticity, and obviously embracing her love of story and writing into the marketing, is really cool. But then, and it's related, the second reflection I have is related to the first one, and it's with the relaunch that she did, renaming, rebranding, relaunching book 2, and it's Emma's willingness to step back, to take a look at it all, to take a look at the big picture, and realize the value, realize the importance of what she could do with that rebranding. And I think it's that taking a step back and looking at it. It's recognizing that there's always something to learn. And it's taking chances, of course, mentioning to her son-in-law, hey, it'd be a great idea, a beer that's branded with my book. Or even reaching out to me on social media, taking that chance and saying, hey, I don't think this has been done before, and beginning a conversation. So you got to remember, what she did on social media wasn't, hey, Mark, pay attention to me, let's do this thing. That came afterwards, where I wanted to interview her for the podcast. She reached out because she wanted to engage in a conversation and ask a question. And so we did a bit of a back and forth. I looked at it, thought, this is the coolest thing. Got to talk to you. I hope it's okay. Could you come on my podcast, etc. So again, it's this authenticity. It's this being willing to continue to learn. It's this appreciation of understanding marketing's not scary. It can be your friend. And being willing to rebrand, being willing to take some chances and break some eggs, make some mistakes along the way. So plenty of things that I learned from Emma in this conversation. Please share if you have your own things that you've learned, reflections you'd love to make, love to hear them, over at starkreflections.ca or at the various social media channels. Love to hear your comments and know what you're thinking about when you're watching the episode. But that is it for episode 326. Until next week, and until next episode, and hopefully I get a little bit more of my voice back by then. This is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.